What is going on, guys? In today's video, I will show you the best sword and shield with Greatsword build in Throne and Liberty. So in this guide, I will give you a quick overview of the setup, then I will explain what skills and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well, we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the mid-game and the full end-game. And then finally, we will go over weapon masteries, stats, your skill rotations, and even what guardians should you use. So we would be able to be very tanky while at the same time do as much damage as possible and much more. This setup will provide us with one of the strongest buffs in the game. As a tank, you'll be redirecting 70% of your teammates' damage taken to yourself, while at the same time significantly increasing your party's damage. And on top of all this, we will be doing insane amount of damage as by using specific skills and passives, we'll lower our cooldowns dramatically. If you want to be a melee monster, both as a tank and DPS, then this is the build for you. But if you're looking specifically for a full DPS AoE build, then check the video's description for my Greatsword AoE video. So let's move over to the build. And for the choice of weapons, we're going with the sword and shield, and Greatsword. And first of all, we have our skills. So for defensive skills, we use the shield survival technique, while for active skills we get Gaia Crash, Shield Strike, Valiant Brawl, Guillotine Blade, Da Vinci's Courage, Blood Devotion, Provoking Roar, Counter Barrier, Chain Hook, Stalwart Bastion, Strategic Rush, and Will Breaker. As you can see from the gameplay, I don't have all these same skill icons on my bar. It is because the skills icon will change depending on our specialization setup. So Shield Strike will turn into Piercing Strike, then Valiant Brawl will turn into Cruel Smite, and Blood Devotion will turn into Devoted Sanctuary. And then for passive skills, we get Robust Constitution, Vital Force, Indomitable Armor, Resilient Mind, Spectrum of Agony, Aegis Shield, Impenetrable, and Victor's Morale. As for skill upgrade priority, for active skills we want to mainly focus on Shield Strike, Shield Survival Technique, Da Vinci's Courage, Counter Barrier, and Stalwart Bastion. While for passive skills we focus on Robust Constitution, Resilient Mind, Aegis Shield, Vital Force, and Indomitable Armor. For the rest of your skills, they're not as important, so just upgrade them as you progress through the game. Also remember to always upgrade all of your skills to blue first, before moving on to purple. Next we have Skill Specialization, and for Gaia Crash we select Attack Speed Increase and Critical Hit Chance Increase. Then for Valiant Brawl we get Cruel Smite, Damage Increased, and Aggro Increase. For Da Vinci's Courage, get Duration Increase, Damage Reduction, and Instant Healing. Then for Provoking Roar, get Effect Duration and Cooldown Speed. Then for Chain Hook and Strategic Rush, don't get anything. Then for Shield Strike, get Piercing Strike and Aggro Increased. For Guillotine Blade, select Charges Damage and Cooldown Reduction. Then for Blood Devotion, get all 4 of these, so Devoted Sanctuary, Duration Increased, Damage Transfer Increase, and Damage Increase. Then for Counter Barrier, get Cooldown and Damage Increase. For Stalwart Bastion, don't select anything. And finally for Will Breaker, get Damage Area Change. Next we have Weapon Mastery, and this is how it should look for the sword and shield. So take a look at the middle and get everything from Skillful Block until All-Out Defense. Now go to the bottom and only get this one node, called Max Health. And last but not least, now we can go to the top row and get this entire thing. And then this is how it should look like for the Greatsword. So this time we go to the middle and only select this one, Skilled Vitality. Then next we go to the bottom and get that entire row. And lastly we go to the top and select everything from Ranged Defense until Overcome Snare. Next, let's take a look at our gear. And all of these items you can easily farm yourself. Which means that I specifically found items that only require you to grind specific spots and not use the auction house if you don't want to. Also, if you're looking for a full green gear setup, then I recommend for you to watch my leveling guides, which are already up on my channel. But to be honest, green and blue gear doesn't really matter, as you'll be getting purple pieces right after getting to level 50 and by following my gear upgrade guide. So first off, we are using Karnik's Netherblade, with traits like Max Health, Hit Chance, and Heavy Attack Chance. All gear should be at its max level, and you can get this item crafting recipe from Death's Abyss dungeon. Next we have Duke Magnus Provoking Warblade, with traits like Max Health, Hit Chance, and Heavy Attack Chance. You can get it from Butcher's Canyon. Next we have the Gloom Guard Helmet, with Max Health, Melee Evasion, and Cooldown Speed. You can get it from dungeons like the Death's Abyss and Spectre's Abyss. Next we have Supreme Devotion with Mana Regen, Skill Damage Resistance, and Debuff Duration. You can get it from the Cave of Destruction. Next we have Shock Commander Plate Armor with Max Health, Melee Evasion, and Ranged Evasion. You can get it from bunch of purple chests or by defeating the Demon Hoof Shaman. Next we have Gloomguard Gauntlets with mana regen, melee evasion, and added attack speed. You can get it from dungeons like Death's Abyss or Cave of Desperation. Next we have Gloomguard Greaves with mana regen, melee evasion, and debuff duration. You can get it as a reward from the Death's Abyss. Next we have the Gloomguard Sabatons with mana regen, melee evasion, and ranged evasion. You can get it from dungeons like Roaring Temple or Death's Abyss. Next up we have Clasp of the Conqueror with max health, skill damage boost, and buff duration. You can only get it by opening all types of purple armor chests. Next we have the Ancient Saurodama Braces with mana regen, skill damage resistance, and debuff duration. You can only get it from purple armor chests. Next we have the Etched Alabaster Band with max health, skill damage boost, and buff duration. You can get it from Abyss chests or by defeating the Demon Hoof Tracker. Next we have Amber Dimensional Band with max health, skill damage boost, and buff duration. You can only get it from purple armor chests. And finally, we have the Belt of Endless Slaughter with max health, skill damage resistance, and debuff duration. You can get it from the Butcher's Canyon dungeon. Last but not least, if at this current moment you only have blue gear, then don't worry because you'll soon enough start changing it for the purple pieces. The setup I showed is the best current gear that anyone can farm. But no matter what gear you choose, this build will still work fine. But this setup is just an example of what good items with good traits will look like. Next up, let's take a look at our gear upgrades. This game doesn't have a very typical gear progression. By this I mean you'll have to upgrade pretty much anything you get. So we go from gray to green to blue and finally purple. No matter at which stage of progression you're watching this video, just keep upgrading your equipment to their max level. And then when you get better gear, just transfer the experience from the old one to the new one. As for my gear recommendations, when you reach level 50, just farm accessible gear by doing open world dungeons. Also, you want to extract traits from Gear for Lucent. On top of that, you'll need to turn important purple gear acquired from co-op dungeons into lithographs and then sell them on the auction house. Last but not least, for your traits, just prioritize the ones that give you the highest damage. Next up, we have the stats. The goal for your endgame build is to reach 70 strength, 30 dexterity, and 30 perception. But if you aren't at this point yet, then first off, get the 30 dexterity, then next get to 60 strength, and then lastly get to 30 perception. And now from here, just get to 70 strength. For PVE, you care mainly about maximum damage and survivability, so that's why we want to focus our main points into strength and dexterity. Next we have our Guardian choice, and this creature is a special transformation that can add offensive or defensive buffs to your character for 30 seconds. And for our build, we have two best choices. The first one is the Lady Knight Camarcia. This Guardian is useful while you learn new dungeons. It helps in dangerous situations as an emergency button to survive mechanics that deal significant amount of damage. The other option is the Shade Revenant Steno. This Guardian launches projectiles every second that can crit and heavy attack. This is pretty much the highest DPS Guardian, so if you're lacking in that department, then he's the right guy for you. And now finally, we have come to the gameplay. As this setup is versatile, so I'll give you 3 different rotations for 3 different objectives. So first off, we have the opening rotation. And at the beginning of every fight, you want to start by activating Da Vinci's Courage, then use Piercing Strike, Devoted Sanctuary, Provoking Roar, Willbreaker, Gaia Crash, Guillotine Blade, Piercing Strike again, and then finish it off with Cruel Smite. This is our main rotation in which we use Da Vinci's Courage to pre-buff and give ourselves party-wide increased bonuses. And then from here, we just do damage with our DPS skills, and in between the rotation, put in Piercing Strike and Cruel Smite to keep maintaining the enemy's aggro on ourselves. Next we have Single Target Burst rotation, and in this one we started by using Gaia Crash, Guillotine Blade, Piercing Strike, and then finish it off with Cruel Smite. This quick combo will give us fast burst damage and of course help us keep holding the enemy's aggro. And now finally for the last one, we have our defensive rotation. So for high defense, we just simply use Provoking Roar and then Willbreaker. These 2 skills will come off cooldown at the same time, so use them both at the same time to gain the most value out of their buffs. Just don't forget that if you ever lose the boss's aggro, then immediately use it again. Also, certain bosses have monsters that you need to kill. As a tank, you must stay in melee range, as most bosses do a party-wide AoE when their target is not within melee range. Also, you can use Chain Hook to group up weaker enemies while staying in melee range, which also maxes out the boss's aggression, forcing the boss to attack you, and that's about it. So, if you enjoyed this video, click like, subscribe, and comment. If you're interested in more content, check out my channel, and I'll see you in the next one. So take it easy, peace.